Honey, have you seen the Silcock Key? This is episode number 29 of the Advantage Survival Podcast, and today we have a special episode. We're welcoming author John D McCann to the Survival Podcast. John talks about his books and survival resources and survivalresources.com, so kick back, grab a Dunkin' Donut and a cup of coffee, and enjoy my conversation with John D McCann. All right, John, welcome to the Advantage Survival Podcast. I wanted to have you on the show because I read your book, Stay Alive, Survival Skills You Need, and I was blown away with the information that was in that book. And I know you have other books and a lot of stuff on survival to talk about. So maybe starting off here, maybe you can give us a quick bio on yourself and maybe talk about survival resources and survivalresources.com a little bit.
Thank you for having me on board here tonight.
You're welcome.
This should be fun. John McCann started as a Boy Scout, like most people do. Spent a lot of time in the woods. My father was a Gold Palm Eagle Scout, and actually turned out to be my scoutmaster. I was adopted, and he was big on pushing me through scouts. During summer vacations, we laugh today because when I went in the Marine Corps, people used to talk about hotels and stuff like that, and I used to kid them. I go, whenever we traveled when I was a kid, we got out at night, set up the tent, and that's the way we traveled because we were always in the Catskills or the Adirondacks. So being in my 60s, I've spent a lot of time out in the woods, and because of that, I've learned skills, taught myself skills, learned from other people. A lot of mentors out there taught me a lot of stuff. And after the Marine Corps, I got involved with some other consulting business, which really had nothing to do with survival, that type of stuff. It had more to do with intelligence and counterintelligence. And I spent a lot of years doing that in between, flying around, doing a lot of stuff. But my heart was always back in the woods and back in, I shouldn't just say the woods, self-reliance, really. It's being brought up in the 50s. I always get a kick out of people today talking about prepping and self-reliance and how this is like a new invention or something. And quite frankly, that was a way of life in the 50s. Everybody canned, everybody hunted, everybody had a garden. It was just a normal way to go.
Certainly some lost skills today for sure.
Right, and today it's like a specialty. And as opposed to just, I try to push people into making it a normal way of life, and which is the way it should be. So to make a long story short, things went on. I got back heavier into survival about 20 years ago, and about 10 years ago I dedicated myself to it. Right up front, I always like to say, and I always put it out there, I read on some of these reviews of my books, and on the back of some of my books that the publishers put on there, expert John McCann, and I like everybody to know right up front, I am not an expert. I don't consider myself an expert, and I never will. I'm what I call a student of survival and a student of self-reliance. And as long as you remain a student, you're going to remain learning the rest of your life. If you consider yourself an expert, a lot of these experts out there, they sort of close their mind and they forget that this is a continual learning experience. We have to continue to learn the rest of our lives. So I guess I would call myself a perpetual student of survival and self-reliance. Quite a few years ago, I wrote a book, Build the Perfect Survival Kit. And that was the first book I put out there. And I wrote that because no one had ever written a book on survival kits, believe it or not. Oh, yeah. So I wrote this entire book, no publisher, no anything. I just wrote it, and then I went looking for a publisher, and I went to some of the bigger ones around. And the biggest one, which is the one I really wanted, says, this sounds like a chapter to a book. It doesn't sound like a book. And I kind of explained to him, I said, well, that's the problem. It's always been a chapter of a book where somebody goes, this is my survival kit. And this is a book on how to build your own, whether it be a mini kit, a medium kit, a small kit, a large kit, a truck kit. This is how to build any type of kit. It's not my kit, and it's not your kit. It's going to be the kit that the person builds for themselves. And we went back and forth, and he goes, well, I guess I could look at it, send me the manuscript, which I did. And I told him, I said, I got 2 other people looking at this. He goes, oh, really? I says, yeah, but, I'd really like to go with you guys. So about 2 weeks later, I get a call from this guy saying, you haven't signed with anyone yet, have you? And I said, no. He said, this is wild. This is like a whole book on survival kits. I said, well, that's what I tried to explain to you. So as it worked out, they wanted the book. They published the book, and it became very successful. The first couple years, I don't want to say it was like a New York Times bestseller, but it sold 30,000 copies.
Oh, wow.
And for me, that was a lot of books.
That is a lot of books.
So we started getting calls and emails saying, where do you get all this stuff? I mean, you show hundreds and thousands of things in this book. And I said, well, I buy them everywhere, all over the place. And they said, well, why don't you sell them? So we only got to pay shipping once. And I was like, yeah, right, I'm going to sell survival kit components, So I talked to the wife about it, and we kidded around, and we said, well, hell, let's give it a try. And we did. And it's turned out to a very successful company. I mean, we're one of the few. There's a lot of companies out there who call themselves survival kit, this, that, and the other thing, but they're selling kits, and we specialize in components. I mean, we want you to build your own kit. I'm not saying we don't sell survival kits, but it's only been in the last couple of years where people have said, Mr. McCann, we're really too lazy to build our own, and if somebody's going to build one, we want you to do it. So we do build, I would say, a small selection of kits, small kits, mini kits. We do some larger vehicle kits. But what our site and what our company is really about is teaching and getting people to build their own kits and providing them with everything they need to do so. So I guess in a nutshell, we probably took up the hour already, me introducing myself. But that's how I came to be here. And
well, that's incredible. You talk about kits and survival kits, and I know that when I'm looking at survival gear or putting together a survival kit, there's a lot of junk out there. I mean, there's some stuff that just doesn't make sense, or stuff that you don't need, or it's stuff that's not, of good quality that you would want to put in your survival kit. And just going through your website, survivalresources.com, and looking at the items you have there, it's really amazing, and it's good quality stuff that you do need in a survival kit.
And it's not real expensive if you buy your own components. I dedicate an area in Build the Perfect Survival Kit, and I think I also talk about it in Stay Alive, about commercial kits. And the idea of a commercial kit is people want to be able to, okay, we're going to sell a kit for $30. So now we got to put all this stuff in it, and we got to get the cheapest junk we can find, because we got to get all this stuff in there and still be able to sell it for $35, which means we got to be able to build it for about $12, which is why our pre-built kits are so expensive, because we put the stuff in our kits that we sell. You want a quality survival mirror, you want a quality compass, you want a quality fire starter, all the different component groups that I discuss in Build the Perfect Survival Kit that you need, and which is how that book really came about, is people were always asking me, well, what do I put in my kit? How do I know if I have what I'm supposed to? And I used to tell them, look, don't worry about the components first. What you really have to do is worry about what you got to do in a survival situation. You got to build a shelter. You got to start a fire. You got to navigate. You got to do first aid. You got to do this. You got to do that. You got to do the other things. So now we know what we're going to have to do in a survival situation. Do you have something in your kit to help you do that? And that's how my survival component groups came out, where we need fire, we need shelter, we need signaling, we need navigation, we need this. Those component groups are really a result of what the different tasks that you have to perform in a survival situation.
And you have to have that stuff with you. So, I mean, I would think that your kit would have to be, something that somebody would be willing to take with them when they're just, going out and recreating or doing whatever they're doing in the backcountry or wilderness or whatever.
Yeah, and it's important. My big push is it doesn't do you any good if you don't have it with you. I mean, you got to have it with you. If you build, we used to do a thing when we were still running our survival school, which we closed about 2 years ago because it just got out of hand. When we used to do an advanced course, we'd take them like to the Adirondacks, and we'd set up camp, and they'd put their packs in their tents or under their shelters or their lean-tos or whatever, and I'd say, well, let's go for an edible plant walk. And we'd go out and head out into the bush, and we'd get out a ways, and I'd go, okay, now everyone show me your mini kit. And they'd go, what's in my pack? Well, where's your pack? What's back at camp? And I'd say, what good does it do? The idea of a mini kit, and I wrote an article, it's on my website, it's called The Misconceptions of Mini Kits, because I've had a lot of people out there over the years say, a mini kit isn't worth, I don't know if I can say shit or not, isn't worth a damn.
Well, it's okay.
It's a little, you got this little Altoids tin, what are you going to do? You're not going to survive with that. You're not going to be able to, well, no, a mini kit is not designed to go out and live in the woods. And you know what? Most of your survival kits, Les, are not made to go out and live in the woods.
Right.
They're meant to survive for a couple of days. We hear the term all the time, the 72-hour kit. I mean, even your bug-out bags that you're going to run out and live in with the rest of your life, they're called 72-hour bags for a reason. So would I want to go out and really survive in the bush for 72 hours with just a mini kit built into a little container? No. But you know what, Les? If it's all I had, it's going to provide me with fire. It's going to provide me with shelter. It's going to provide me with signaling. It's going to have a cutting tool. I'm going to be able to sew. I'm going to be able to freshwater fish. You know what? Maybe it's not so bad after all. And I always tell people to supplement a mini kit. If I'm carrying just like an Altoids tin kit with me, in one of my jacket pockets, I always got a survival blanket, and I always got an emergency poncho, because the biggest thing that's lacking in a mini kit is shelter.
Right.
Shelter.
It's hard to
now,
put one in there.
Parachute cord, well, everyone carries a parachute cord. Bracelet, I carry what they call a pocket pallet. It's shown in a couple of my books, which is a piece of plastic wrapped with parachute cord, which lives in my right rear pocket. I always got a neck lanyard on for my for a small knife that I carry. It's a parachute cord. So you at least have enough cord to build a shelter, or if need be, and you were really stupid and didn't bring fire, you have enough cordage to start yourself a bow and drill, which I've actually seen people carrying in a survival kit, a bow and drill, and I'm like, you do realize you should be carrying 3 ways to start a fire, Well, I like to practice with it. So it's a bushcraft tool. It's something you're going to play with, but it's not a survival tool. Because if you fall through the ice in the middle of the winter up here in northern New York, you know what? You're never going to build or use a bow and drill. It's not going to happen.
Sure.
It's not going to. It's just reality. If you don't have something on you to start a fire, carry a Bic lighter. Have a Bic lighter, have a small ferro rod, have a spark light, have some emergency waterproof matches, have something, and have more than one. I believe in having 3 ways to start a fire on you at all times. I don't care if you're going to the supermarket. That's just the way I live my life.
Yeah, and that's definitely rules to live by. I know in my past experience in search and rescue, and I did search and rescue for 25 or odd years here in Pierce County, Washington, and we're in the shadow of Mount Rainier, and time after time we've gone out looking for hunters or hikers or just folks walking the trail for a quick hour-long hike, and they have nothing with them. They don't have any type of survival gear, no way to start a fire. And if they, I think to myself, if they just had a mini kit or 3 ways to start a fire, life would have been a lot different for them. And certainly it's no fun packing you out dead, and people want to survive another day. So how do you get people prepared? I mean, how do you get the word out there? I know when people ask me, listen, I'm just starting out. I'm going to go on a hike. I'm going to learn how to hike and do some backpacking. What kind of survival skills do I need? And I got to be honest with you. I refer them right back to your book, Stay Alive, Survival Skills You Need, because it really impacted me with the photos that are in that book and just the information out there. That is the go-to manual in my mind for getting somebody in the mindset of survival, and along with your other books too, with building the perfect survival kit. So, I mean, that's what I tell people.
I appreciate that. I've had some people go, well, it doesn't delve enough into primitive skills.
Well,
and I always refer them back to the book and say, do you see anywhere on the book that it says primitive skills? And there's a lot of these guys out there, and I'm friends with a lot of them, a lot of these bushcrafters and stuff like that. And what I try to do with a lot of these people is I try to go, are we talking survival or are we talking bushcraft? Okay, survival is something that you have to do because something happens.
Right.
That's the way it happens, Les. And you know, especially if you've done search and rescue, somebody's out there on a nice day hike, and they fall down, they break their leg, or they get lost in the woods, and they aren't prepared. That's called survival. You have to do what you have to do for a day, 2 days, or 3 days to survive. And, of course, the more you have with you, the easier it is for you to survive. Now, I'm a big believer in skills. That's why it says survival skills you need. But I don't believe that skills alone can make a survival situation better. That's just ludicrous.
Right.
Skills can get you through with nothing, because we all know that the most important survival tool is your brain, and the most important survival tool after your brain is a knife. And with a knife, you can pretty much do anything. But there's a difference between surviving and smoothing a bad situation. So if you have some stuff with you to help you build a shower, to help you build a fire, to help you navigate, to help you purify water, to help you boil water, if you don't have a cup on you, you're in a lot of trouble if you can't boil water, because you're not going to stay hydrated, and we know hydration is very important to survival. Where bushcraft, on the other hand, is, I don't want to call it a hobby, it's a craft, but you're really going out and you're practicing more of the primitive skills, and we've taught those as well over the years, you know, but what I want to make sure is people have the basic skills. What Stay Alive is about. It's keeping you alive for 72 hours. Now, if you want to go out and start practicing bow and drill or hand drill and making spoons with coals and doing all these things that I love to do, I really enjoy these things. I really do. But I don't, even in our basic course in our school, we never taught primitive skills. We had an intermediate class where we got into primitive skills, and then an advanced class where we got further into primitive skills. But to me, that first 1, 2, 3 days is really about basic survival. And, you know, people want to get into trapping and getting into all this type of stuff, and it's fun. I love the heck out of it, okay? But, you know, we already know the rules of 3. You know, you got the 3 minutes without air, 3 days without water, and 3 weeks without food. Now, I don't suggest anyone go in 3 weeks without food, but you can survive for 3 weeks without food. So as opposed to setting out traps, I'm probably going to be building a shelter, getting a fire going so that I can purify water, so that I can stay hydrated, so that I can think clearly, and maybe either self-rescue or stay alive long enough for someone like you to come out and find me.
Right, and
does that make any sense?
Oh, it makes complete sense. And I know, you're absolutely right. I mean, there's a place for bushcraft skills and doing those sorts, and people need to explore those when they can. But I know personally, I'm good, like you. I'm going to have a shelter with me, and I don't want to spend a lot of time, trying to construct a debris shelter or whatever kind of natural materials I can come up with to build a shelter. I want to be able to have that piece of plastic or a tarp or something with me that I can instantly get a shelter going, so I can work on collecting firewood and those kinds of things. And you're right, able to think clearly so you can figure out your next step.
Right. Make your plan on what you're going to do next. Don't panic. Sit down, take care of your priorities, and then figure out, what are we going to do now? Are we going to stay here, or are we going to leave? You had asked me when we were talking a while back about was I ever have any interesting survival experiences, or what I get a lot, especially like when I did the New York Times. They came up to our school and spent 3 days up there, and we got in the New York Times on a Friday, and he pushed me for 3 days on, tell me about your worst survival experience, and this and that. I mean, you're a teacher. You must have had a terrible survival experience at one time. And, I kept telling him, I really haven't. My worst survival experience when I was about 10 camping with my father in the Catskills, and looking for firewood. I wandered away from camp, and all of a sudden I didn't know where the heck I was. I was lost. And my dad had always told me, if you get lost, sit down, I'll find you. Don't panic, just sit down, yell if you have to. Back then we didn't even have a whistle other than ones we made from tin cans.
Sure.
Okay? But one thing my dad never let me in the woods without was a pocket knife, which nowadays, if kids have a pocket knife, I guess they're thrown out of school and they're arrested and everything, and they're a domestic terrorist.
It is truly
Where
a shame,
back in those days, if you didn't have a pocket knife in your pocket, you probably weren't a real guy,
Exactly.
So, I got my knife, I start whittling the piece of wood, and I'm sitting there, and every once in a while I yell out, "Hey, Dad, I'm over here," and but what I did while I was sitting there is I realized that if Dad doesn't find me, what am I going to do now? I'm going to have to build a shelter. I got to get in something for the night, and this, that, the other thing. And even at 10 years old, I started realizing that, I probably should have more stuff on me. And from that time on, I got to tell you, Les, I have never been. People sometimes they challenge me. I'm at a show or something like that. You're always talking about this massive EDC that you carry. Let me see it. And you know what? It's always on me, 7 days a week. I always got a way to start a fire. I got this. I got a signaling device. I got cordage. I got, And when I go out, even for a day hike, I've always got one of my kits. And I got water, and I got a cup to boil water, and even normally purification tablets. So I guess I've never been in a real bad survival situation because I guess I hate to say I've never been stupid enough to put myself in one.
I know in search and rescue you can't teach common sense when you're training folks, and you either have it or you don't, I guess. And if you've
What's
got
that thing
it,
they say about you can't fix stupid?
you can't fix stupid either. All you can do is try and inform people, and hopefully they make some smart decisions that'll save their life.
That's all you can really do. That's all I've done. And on the other hand, people seem to know me as survival, and now they're getting with my new book, one of my new books that came out this year, the Practical Self-Reliance. It's about reducing your dependency on others. And I want people to know that this isn't all about wilderness survival. Self-reliance, like I say, which I've been doing since the 50s, it's something that there's this image out there that you've got to go out and get a homestead. I'm going to go homesteading, okay? Or I'm going to go out and buy a bunch of property in the country and grow a big garden, and I'm going to be self-reliant. And I thought about it for a long time, and the wife said, "John, you ought to do a book on just practical self-reliance," which means people who live in the city, the suburbs, the country, no matter where they live, they can in some way be self-reliant. You're not going to be as self-reliant as you are out in the country, but you know what? I got a picture in there under the gardening section of a friend of mine in Spain who grows his vegetable garden on the 7th floor balcony of his apartment.
Wow.
He is somewhat self-reliant. Does he grow all his vegetables? Does he have a garden like me? No. Does he grow a lot of his vegetables? Yes, he grows them up, not out. And to me, these are things people have to understand for emergency situations. And God knows a lot of them that's can happen here. Everything from weather to man-made problems. There's a lot of things. I know we're often at electric 2-3 days, and we've gone as long as 10 days in the middle of the winter. But being self-reliant, we're always prepared. We always got a pantry. We're always ready for the inevitable. And no matter where you live, you can do it. You're going to do it on different levels. Are you going to grow your own grain and grind it like we do to make our own bread? No, but most people don't have a wife who was a home ec teacher in Switzerland and can do anything in the kitchen, cook anything, make bread from scratch. I'm very fortunate that I got such a wonderful woman, but awesome. You can do something, Les. You can do something. And that's why I moved into that area. Matter of fact, I'll be speaking at an expo this year. I'll be a guest speaker, and I'm doing it on practical self-reliance. One of my whatever you call speeches, but one of your things there. And the other one is going to be on bugging out, which is another book I've put out on reality versus hype, because there's so many people who are just so up on my bug out bag. I got to have my bug out bag. And, you and I had discussed this a while back, that where are you going?
Yeah.
Where are you going?
Crickets,
they all think they're going to go out in the woods. Thousands of people are all going to go out in the woods and live off the land. These are the same people who can't survive for 2 days in the woods when they're lost, and yet they got this huge bug out bag. And my thing is, if you're going to carry a bug out bag, why don't you put that on your back and hike about 20 miles with it?
Yeah, bug out bags.
Because you're going to be doing that like every day,
yeah.
For weeks at a time. And let me know how that works out for you, will you? It's not going to happen. And that was the whole idea of this book, is to explain the difference between bugging out and bugging in, and what I feel is more important than both, and that's getting home. Because when you're at work, that's when what they call the proverbial shit's going to hit the fan. Okay, that's when it's going to happen. You're not going to be home. So now your bug out bag is home, and it's staged on that nice shelf that you built for it, and it's all ready to go, and your bug out vehicle is all gassed up and stuff. And how are you going to get home? So I've always, and as I explained to you, I was a consultant for years, suit and tie, and I always had a get home bag. I always had a bag that had survival stuff in it for me to get home, because once I get home, that's where you're going to make that decision, that very important decision. Am I going to bug in or am I going to bug out? And then 9 times out of 10, I'm going to bug in, because that's where all my supplies are.
Sure.
I've spent 30, 40 years fixing up my place and making it so I'm self-reliant and have my pantry and and all this, and I'm going to leave all that so I can go out and live in the woods and try to shoot a deer with 100,000 other people. Now, in reality, I explain in the book, there are times when you're going to have to bug out, but in my mind, 9 times out of 10 or 99 times out of 100, we call that, and you probably do too, Les, evacuation. Okay, yeah. There's a flood. We got to leave for 2 or 3 days, and we're going to go live with Aunt Betty or Uncle Joe, or we're going to go to our friend's house, or if all else fails, we're going to go to a hotel about 40 miles from here, and we're going to live there for 2 or 3 days. And you know what? You can do that out of a suitcase. You don't need this big military bug-out bag with your machetes and all this stuff to go live in a hotel for a couple of days. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't have the means with you, because I always do. If you had to spend a day or two in the woods, you could do it. But we already know you don't need an 80-pound pack to do that. Okay? You could have a small, and if you built your get-home kit correctly, a get-home kit is going to get you home, and you may have to spend a day or two in the woods to do that. Because everyone thinks, well, I drive to work in 20 minutes. So, 20 minutes later, I'm going to be home. You're walking. Okay, you're not driving, you're walking.
And that's going to suck bad if you have to.
I always tell people on 9/11, I had just hit Manhattan when the first plane hit the first tower. And we still had cell service, which only lasted about another 10 minutes. And my wife called and said, hey, a plane just flew into the World Trade Center. And I'm like, what? A little one, big one? I don't know yet. So I put on the radio as I hear some woman screaming, oh, my God, another plane just went in. And my mind said, John, we got a problem here, okay? We may want to head in another direction. So I shot over to a client's place in Westchester County, which is just north and outside of the island, and got there, and at that point, cell service was already down. I couldn't get a hold of home, and I went to clients, and they were all gathered around this radio listening and stuff, and I'm saying, man, we got a major problem here. I got to get home. We're now between my place and where I was going in New York City is about 94 miles. Okay? Now, where I am now, I'm only about 86 miles from home, and I got my truck. But if it had been an EMP, an electromagnetic pulse or something like that, how long do you think it would take me to walk home?
Yeah, that's a long
from
time.
Westchester County.
That's a long time.
Wait, maybe 20 miles a day, maybe. At my age, maybe not. I don't know. I'm still a good Marine. But, even at 20 miles a day, you're talking over 4 days. for me to get home.
Yeah.
And people don't think of that because they drive so fast. Well, it's only an hour to work. Well, what's an hour? How many miles is that? And how many miles can you walk a day? Not including your 80-pound bug-out bag with machete and 3 different weapons, and you got 32 magazines full of 9mm, and you know what I'm saying?
Right.
And this is what I see people doing out there, and I'm like, you know, you got to really get a life, you know? I mean, you got to think about this in a realistic manner. So I hope I'm not going off on tangents.
No,
here.
that's great. You know, I used to, I worked in Seattle. I'm a retired construction superintendent now. So I would commute an hour from Puyallup here and drive on I-5 up to Seattle and work, you know, my ridiculous hours and drive back every night. And I put together a get home bag. But one of the things that stuck with me, John, I got to tell you, and I absolutely loved it. I subscribed to your YouTube channel, and you did a video on using or getting a Silcock key for getting into a hose bib on a building, a commercial building or whatever. And I thought, holy crap, that is something I have absolutely got to put in all of my get home bags. So I went out and I purchased 3 keys, and I've got them in every vehicle. And I got to tell you, that was an amazing video. People don't think about it, like you said. If they're they may have those tons of
when I did that, I didn't think it would go very far.
Oh, man.
And I have had more people comment, and the first thing they wanted to know is, I can't find them on your site. I can't find them on your site. I can't find them on your site. I said, well, we don't sell them. I'm telling you how to use them. So while this is going on, my wife's saying, we really got to sell these at Survival Resources.
Absolutely.
So I said, well, get 50 of the damn things. So they were going in a week. So now we buy them like 200-300 at a time. And I can't believe people buy them for every member of the family. And more people are watching this, and they're saying, I never thought about it. I never thought about this as a way to get water. So, it's just one of those. And as you see by my YouTube channel, I don't do a ton of videos. And people are pushing me all the time, do more videos, You got the most interesting videos. And I say it's because when I do a video, it's because I got something interesting to say. I'm not going to do the same old, this is how you start a fire, this is how you use a ferro rod, this is how you do this is how you... people are beating this stuff to death. They really are. Yeah. Where when I do a video, it's because I have something that I think is maybe new or different. Like the only thing I've done I've done 2 things on fire so far. Not how to start a fire, how this, that, or the other thing, but I did one on the difference between... mish metal and ferro rods, ferrocerium, because no one had done it. And I got 19,000 hits on the things, and people are going, I never knew the difference between the soft ones and the hard ones, and why some are soft and why some are hard, and this, that, and the other thing. And the other one I did was on the blow-in tube.
Oh, yeah.
Which I've been carrying forever. I explain it in the thing. And people go, why don't you sell me one? Well, we don't build them. You just take an OD antenna, and anyone interested, they can go to my YouTube channel and see that, which is, again, Survival Resources. But if you've seen the video, you can see how, you don't need anything but a few embers, and you can rebuild the fire. I've come out in the morning, and I dig down in, and I find a few embers, and I throw some curly birch on it, and I take out my blowing tube, and within a minute, I got a fire. I've never lit a match. I've never lit a lighter, and I never built a bow and drill. I just use what I had there and blow it back into life. So
yeah, that's an amazing tool to have for sure. I kind of along those lines and back to the water. I was thinking about that Silcock key and having to hike home from Seattle, and I'm thinking to myself, the last place I want to go is the corner market and try to buy a bottle of water for $49 or whatever they're going to be charging for it, if they're even open and taking cash, when I can just pop into the side of a building and grab water. The tool for blowing on a fire, the biggest problem I have is I don't have any antennas anywhere. It's hard to find anything that has an antenna on it these days. Maybe I could hit my local Radio Shack store and see if I can find something, but
they sell them, replacement antennas, Radio Shack. That's where we normally get them, and that's why I did the video, because you got to break that end off it, and you got to do that and you got to flare it, because if you don't, then it's just going to fall apart. But bottom line, I mean, if you want to carry the space, what I explained in that video, that when I first started doing that when I was younger, I used to just take a piece of straight brass tubing and put a hose on it.
Oh,
The only reason I came up with the antenna thing was so that it folded down small to fit in my pocket,
Sure.
a jacket pocket. But if you're going to carry it in your pack or something, take a 6-inch piece of just something so that your hose isn't in the fire.
Right.
Your rubber hose. I mean, you could take a 12-inch piece of brass, whatever you can fit in your pack. I mean, people are carrying machetes on their pack. They ought to be able to carry a 6, 8, 10-inch piece of brass tubing or aluminum tubing or something, and then just put that hose on it, which I get. It's like aquarium hose. I used to tell people to buy at aquarium stores, but now all your Home Depots carry that stuff, and they got like every size in the world there.
Right.
And what I like about the hose is you can just, you press fit it on one end of your tube, and then the other end you can roll up.
Yeah, it stores nicely.
It's not long. So you don't need the antenna. The whole idea was is anyone's read Build the Perfect Survival Kit or any of my do-it-yourself on my articles on my website, I'm always trying to get smaller and smaller and smaller, because the smaller it is, the more you can carry.
Right.
So
you have 7 books out there, John. Which one is your favorite?
Which one is my favorite? My first favorite was my first, Build the Perfect Survival Kit, and then Stay Alive became my favorite, and then Practical Self-Reliance became my favorite, and then Bug Out come out, and now it's somewhere between Bug Out and Practical Self-Reliance, only because for me the other two, are old. They're a couple years old.
Sure.
So and I guess it's really the genre, I think. Like, what's my favorite book I did on survival kits?
Right.
Well, it would be Build the Perfect Survival Kit. What's my favorite book on survival skills? Well, the only one I wrote. What's my favorite book on self-reliance? I only did one. And if you're talking about Bug Out, then it's going to be Reality versus Hype. Now, one of my favorite books is one of my smallest, is The Layers of Life. And that's Thoughts on Nature, Living, and Self-Reliance. And it's nothing but very small essays. And I've had some people tell me it's one of their favorite, not one of their favorite books of mine, but one of their favorite books. And it's a whole different, let's say, John McCann, because everyone's used to me being Mr. Survival and Mr. Self-Reliance and Mr. Beard and Long Hair and Bug Out. But this is a different side of me. This is essays. I've always been a nut on John Burroughs, who was actually lived about 14 miles from where I live right now. So I just like to explain things in words to where you get a picture, and that's what that book is about. I don't know if it's going to teach you much, but it is going to teach you about life, about just thoughts on nature, living, and self-reliance. And there's a lot of different things in there. I mean, spring, fall, summer, the beauty of winter, the hike. There's one in there called The Pond, an essay, and it explains the place where I went when I was a kid, where everybody has that place that they remember when they were a kid, that they went to be alone or to think, or just to think about the universe, Sure. And mine was The Pond, and that's the name of this, is The Pond, and I explain it in detail what it was like. But what it does, I've had a lot of people come back on that and say, oh, my place was, they says, it took me right back to my place when I was a kid, because everybody has that place. It may be under your bed, I don't know, but everybody has that place that they went to be alone and to grow up and to learn, that I'm becoming an adult. And I'm not talking when you're 15, 16 years old. These are places you went when you were 10, 11, 12, 13. So that's probably one of my favorite books, because it's a different side of me that most people have never seen. And then my new book, Wake Up Call, which is my first novel, I like it because it's about self-reliance. I like it because I wrote it. I'm still getting feedback on it. It's new. It's only been out there it came out in October. Some people are raving about it. Some people aren't talking about it, and I don't know why. If they just haven't said anything. I haven't got any real negatives on it yet.
Well, it probably
but it's my first
them.
attempt at a novel. It's a small one. It's only 180 pages, but it has a very surprise ending in it. But it's pretty much about self-reliance, about, being able to, I'll read you real quick here what it says on the Kindle version. It says, Tom Hamilton is jolted awake by an earthquake and things quickly go from bad to worse. Todd and his wife Melissa have done well in life until the earthquake rattles their world. Follow them for a day. This all happens in one day as they try to cope with being unprepared for an emergency situation where money means nothing and a radiation leak from a local power plant only adds to their problems. They quickly realize that their lack of preparedness was a big mistake. And there's a lot of reality in the book. I talk about this happens in New York, where I am, and there is a fault line that happens to run right through Reactor 3 of Indian Point nuclear power plant, which is why they've been trying to shut it down for years. And they don't realize that this fault line, if it goes, if we have the earthquake in New York, it's probably going to be, and also a radiation problem as well. So, and this is where this occurs. They're right down the street from this thing. So, but the ending is I think is pretty unique, different. I had one a young lady, a lady in her 40s, Dunkin' Donuts, who had read it, and she came up to me and she says, I couldn't believe the ending. I couldn't believe it. And I says, well, that's the whole idea.
That book might hit home for us here in the Pacific Northwest too, because we're waiting for our big 9.0 earthquake to shake us into the Puget Sound. So
yep.
Yeah, no, that
your problem is you're going to end up in the ocean.
We are going to end up in the ocean. That's definitely. All right, John. Well, listen, I'd like to probably put a wrap up to the interview. We've been going for a while, but there's one question I always like to ask my guests, and that is, what question would you ask if you were conducting this interview?
Probably with me being, I've gone from being survival, teaching survival, to now writing a lot of books. A lot of people ask me, why do you write?
So why do you write?
I write, and I have a quote on this on my blog, I write not because of what I have learned, but to pass on what I have learned.
Excellent.
And that's where I've dedicated the later part of my life, is I don't want to take what I've learned with me, and I want to share it. I want to prepare other people. As you know, we've talked before, Les, I don't do this just for the money. I do it because, I started selling survival kit stuff because I want people to build survival kits. If I didn't, then I would just sell them a bunch of junk kits instead of selling them good stuff. I wrote my first book because I wanted people to build survival kits. I write survival books so people can survive, right. And my other books to be self-reliant and to be able to make a real judgment on should you bug out or not. So that is why I write, because I want to pass this on. Do I make some money off it? Yeah, not a lot. Most people are not going to get rich writing, but it is, I guess, a legacy that I know that when I'm gone, and that could be tomorrow. I mean, I'm in my 60s. I could last another 20 years, or I could last another 20 minutes. I'm just glad I made it through this interview. But I know that after I go, that people are still going to be able to learn from me, and maybe that's just important to me.
Well, I appreciate the insight there, John. Definitely, I appreciate you being on the Advantage Survival podcast. We definitely learned a lot, and hopefully folks will get out and take a look at your books and take a look at survivalresources.com. In closing, how can folks get a hold of you? What's the best way to contact you or your blog?
Well, if they go to survivalresources.com under contacts, it provides my email, which is survivalman, all one word, at optimum, optimum.net. And you can always get me through there. If you have a lot of female questions, there's no one more talented at wilderness survival than my wife, and it would be the same email except it's survivalgirl@optimum.net. And we have a lot of women who call or email asking her questions. Well, what do you carry? What do you use for fire? This, that, and the other thing. On Facebook, I can be found under John McCann. I can be found under John D McCann. Survival Resources has a Facebook page. I also have my own blog on johndmccann.com, where I put up essays, more of the type of stuff from the layers of life, and I talk about my books and that type of stuff. I try to somehow keep that separate from Survival Resources. It hasn't worked too well because, basically I am all of it. Right. Me and my wife. I mean, this small business, we run it. It's a veteran-owned, 100% veteran-owned business. So there you have it, buddy.
Well, excellent, John. Thanks again for being on the Advantage Survival podcast, and hopefully we can have you back for a follow-up interview sometime.
Anytime. If you give me a call, we'll be there.
Sounds good. Thanks, John.
Thank you.
All right, I hope you enjoyed today's show with John D. McCann. Check out John's website at survivalresources.com, 100% veteran-owned business, and tons of things that you can use in your survival kit. All right, if you have any survival or prepping questions you'd like answered on the air, go to advantagesurvival.com and click on the red Send a Voicemail message on the right-hand side of the screen. You can leave me a 90-second voicemail there, and I may use it on a future show. Don't forget to like my Advantage Survival Facebook page, and you can support the show by checking out my ebook, Surviving a Day Hike All Night, on Amazon. You get some great insight and stories of my search and rescue adventures and learn all about surviving a day hike all night. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next one.